Hello? Yes. Yes. Really? Yes. Amazing. Incredible. Thank you very much. Breaking news because Alexandros has landed on Mars. Unbelievable. Alexandro is safe and landed on Mars. NASA just confirmed me on the phone. First words he said, a little dive for me, a huge step forward for humankind. I mean, I'm impressed. This is really breaking news. I'm without any words, Alistair. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is history. We're making history.
I think I'm the one without any words after that intro. I think you've got another career beckoning if the YouTube doesn't work out. You know,
I
get over to
know,
Hollywood.
I know. But the last 3 days, Juventus journalists have been talking only about this. So I thought it was nice to start from this. Do you think that was a goal that should have been disallowed? The Milinkovic one.
Well, no. To be honest, this is it kind of took me by surprise how much chat there's been around this, how long it's lasted, because at the time, usually, I was working at the game in the press box, so you do actually get an opportunity to see the replays of, which you don't obviously if you're in the stands normally. And I was covering the game, and I was absolutely no doubt about the fact that it was okay. I mean, it's a strange one because I think any contact now, people will say that will say it can be argued either way. But not let's not confuse what's a push and what isn't. I think to push someone, you have to actually apply force on someone. If you're touching someone, you don't. And I think, to be honest, the main talking point there is pretty embarrassing defending. Because if you're in that position, your priority isn't winning a foul. Your priority is clearing the ball. And he's failed to do that. He shouldn't be trying to get a foul in that position.
Yeah, and it's one hand, and it doesn't look like Milinkovic Savic is pushing that hard. So diving that bad, it's simply embarrassing. I think I don't remember which is the US TV show that broadcast the match, and there was saying just that. Yeah, little push, but that's a little bit too much. But the other thing, Alistair, is how many times should have been Quadrado sent off in that match? And Locatelli
Mm.
nearly destroyed the knee of Milinkovic Savic. I mean, Juventus should have finished the first half down 9 men. So it's hard to trust to argue with the ref when he saved you pretty much.
This is the most Vittorio start to a podcast about a famous win. Just going straight into the refereeing controversies here. I
Yeah, let's take
mean,
it out, and then we talk about
no. I mean, it's you do make a reasonable point, obviously, and there's something Sarri said after the game, and now uh, I don't know what you make of Lazio's social media account putting out a kind of highlights package of all the fouls committed by Quadrado and then Locatelli's bad one on Milinkovic as well. Because I think it's one thing in the heat of the moment for a coach to say something like that, but then for an official club account to go and lean into it the day after, I mean, it was a bit surprising.
it is surprising, but I guess the social media is going that way. I mean, that has been the most viewed video, I think, in the last month or so about Lazio, nearly 2 million views yesterday. So, and I remember Roma social Twitter account making jokes about Lazio failing to reach the Champions League. So, I think I would have done it, to be honest with you, but it's something that I see happen often. Maybe we are too old for this, but I mean, if your goal is to engage and etc., they achieve it, right? 2 million views for a Lazio video. That's huge, I guess. So
I know. I do. The only thing I do feel slightly uncomfortable with, I mean, you know, I don't really like spending ages talking about refereeing anyway because I find it dull, to be honest. But I've been having to write something today about refereeing in Italy and the position that Italian referees are put in compared to other leagues and so on. And there have been 200 cases of assault against referees in the last year in Italy across all levels. And I think that there is a very bad kind of environment and atmosphere towards officials in Italy. So it is a bit of banter. Don't take it too seriously, but I do think it doesn't really help improve this atmosphere of kind of blaming referees and creating an enemy out of referees when ultimately they're just trying to do their jobs. And yes, he did his job badly in that case, but
I don't think it was against the referee. It was against newspaper journalists.
Yeah, okay.
Because the thing that annoys me more is that Lazio dominated the match. For 66 minutes, Lazio dominated the match. And no Juventus journalists or expert, etc., said Lazio deserved to win. And they won the match not because of the Milinkovic-Savic goal, but because they played better. Instead, everybody, Gazzetta Sport, Tutto Sport, etc., they only spoke about Milinkovic-Savic goal, which it's embarrassing. I mean, if we are complaining about Italian football being so bad, it's even because of this. I mean, Lazio is, at the moment, the best team in Italy, at least the team playing better in the last 5 games. And instead of celebrating Sarri's football, we are talking about the ref. So, and against Lazio, when the ref made more mistakes against Lazio rather than help Lazio. So this is terrible for me. This is absolutely.
Well, you're complaining about it, but now you've spent the first 7 minutes of the podcast talking about it.
Yep.
Come on, let's talk about the football.
Let's talk about the football. I mean, another first time Lazio beats Juventus in Serie A at home since 2020.
19, yeah.
So this is huge. And so far this season, Lazio have beat all the top teams: Napoli, Roma, Inter, Milan, Juventus, Fiorentina as well, Atalanta. Big change, Alasdair. Big difference, right?
Well, it's been the decisive factor in the top 4 race so far. I mean, nobody has a better record in big games this season than Lazio. The only team that can match it is Napoli, who have also picked up 21 points from these games against fellow top 7 teams. And yeah, like you say, I mean, it's been a weak point in the past. It's particularly been a weak point against Juve. Like you say, it's been 3 years or so, 3.5 years since Lazio have beaten them at all. There's been a bit of a mental block in this fixture for quite a long time, especially in that period of dominance they had. And there's just something about this team now where it's, I guess, a combination of things. It's a combination of having this defense to back everything up really helps, because you're always going to come under some pressure against a higher level of opponent. This team is more capable of soaking that kind of pressure up. This team has been really clinical, like in terms of chance conversion, right up there with the best of the league this season. When they do get chances, they've generally been pretty good at taking them. And I think something that Sarri's brought as well is obviously his tactical brilliance, and he's really brought out a few master plans in some of these games this year. But I think he's succeeded in changing the mentality of the team in these matches, because there used to be a general sense of disbelief that they were capable of it sometimes. I mean, okay, we're talking about a slightly different level, but if you look back to that Bayern Munich game in the last 16 of the Champions League, they, from the minute that whistle blew, they just didn't look like a team who had any faith they were going to be good enough to get a result in that match. And as a result, I think there were 4 individual goals, individual mistakes for all the goals, and there you go. So yeah, it's been a huge turnaround there.
Yeah, definitely. Great performance. I mean, it's hard to say who has been the worst player of our squad, because from Provedel, who didn't make incredible saves, to be honest, to Zaccagni, it's hard to rate the best player. Well, probably Luis Alberto and Zaccagni deserve the player of the match. But Danilo Cataldi, we have question about Danilo Cataldi. We didn't mention a lot Danilo, but his performance has been great again against big team like Juventus in the derby. This season, Cataldi has played have started 24 of 28 Lazio Serie A games, which is unexpected compared to the past. So again, I thought not yesterday, Saturday, he had a great match, and when he came off, Lazio struggled a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think he's certainly performed a bigger role than we expected this season. There was a general expectation that Marcos Antonio would certainly be competing for, if not taking that first choice spot when he arrived. And clearly that's not happened. And I guess as the season's developed, his competition has come more from Matthias Vecino, who's Sarri's seen as someone he likes there. I think Cataldi's probably benefited, though, a little bit from that, from the lack of real competition in that kind of playmaker role, because Antonio has taken a long time to adapt. He still hasn't. And Vecino isn't naturally someone who's suited to that role. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he has performed well. Like you said, we a couple of questions. David said he's done a good job in silence and he can be trusted in big games, which I think is true. We also got asked about if he's been forgiven yet for when he was on loan at Genoa and Jeremy scored that free kick. I think so. That was quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's really grumbling about that anymore.
He didn't score this season so far, though. He made up just an assist.
Yeah. Well, I think, it changed, that free kick he scored against Juve in the Supercoppa, for example. He's had some really big moments since coming back from that loan. I think there was a worry around that time that it was never going to happen for him. I think Cataldi's a player everyone kind of wanted this to work for, because something we've spoken about recently is how great it's been to have a core of players in this team now who are Lazio fans and who kind of understand it. But in previous years, it's been kind of Cataldi and that's about it. And we've been relying on him to be the one, to be the bandiera who kind of comes through. And it didn't look, he was off at Benevento for a while. He's off at Genoa for a while. He wasn't really finding his space. He couldn't really work out what his role was, what his best kind of position was. So, I think he does deserve a huge credit for the way he's become a key player.
Yeah, Cataldi, we mentioned, again, second game where Milinkovic scored 2 consecutive goals, which is encouraging, remembering the performance he had before the last 2 games. So this is a positive sign. Luis Alberto performance again, Alasdair. I mean,
how good was the assist?
Oh. Yeah, incredible.
Unreal. I mean, he's been the best Lazio midfielder since the turn of the year, without doubt. He's such an unpredictable enigma of a man, Luis Alberto. You just never know what you're going to get from him. Like the last game where he's kind of having a strop when he's being substituted and whatever he's up to. He never fails to produce storylines, but he's been playing brilliant football. I think as well, Milinkovic-Savic deserves credit. I think if that game had finished at half-time, he would have been man of the match. His first half was exceptional. And he's creating opportunities again. We were talking about this when the goals had dried up, how we really relied on him and needed him to become a bigger focal point in attack to help this team score goals again. And now he's had 2 in 2 games.
2 very important games as well, because obviously scoring against Juventus is important. But without Ciro is back, but not in great shape. Maybe we're going to talk about Ciro. But, Monza was a tough match for Lazio, especially after the derby, etc. So to see him scoring again, it's really, really important. We have a lot of questions, Alasdair, which is surprising, as usually when Lazio win, we hardly have questions. When Lazio loses, we are full of questions. Stevie is asking, 1 out of 10, how confident are you in the Champions League qualification?
Well, this is just setting us up for failure, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would say 7, maybe 10 being the most confident. I'd say 7. That might sound a little bit reserved, but we've been burned so many times before that it's hard to feel too confident. 7 points is a big gap, but there's still 9 games to go. It's still a reasonable amount of football to be played over the next couple of weeks. At least one Italian team, if not 2, will be knocked out of the Champions League, potentially a few more from Europa League as well. So we'll have to see how that affects things. I wrote a piece kind of about the run-ins and comparing them, and the kind of method I came up with was to take the current league position of all the remaining opponents and then divide it by 9 so that you get an average. And Lazio turn out to have the second best league run. The average position is 12, compared to Inter, which I think I should have got this up in advance. Here it is. So yeah, Inter 8.9, Roma 9.7, Juve 10, Atalanta 10.9, Lazio 12, Milan 12.2. So that is encouraging, I guess. How are you feeling about it?
Well, the issue is that there's still Milan Lazio and Inter Lazio, 2 away games really important. So, and in that week where we play against AC Milan, if I'm not wrong, we are playing Inter the 30th of April. Then the 3rd of May, there's Lazio Sassuolo, and the 7th, there's Milan Lazio. So those 2 key matches are one after another, and in that 7 days, Lazio plays 3 times. So really, Lazio doesn't have a lot of time to prepare the Milan game. So that's one of the issue. The other one is obviously at San Siro, Lazio have struggled to perform. So if we pass those 3 games, then I would be more confident. But at the moment, I think 6 out of 10, I would say. I mean, it's still wide open. And 7 points doesn't count pretty much. You just need 2 defeats, and if you lose against Milan and Inter, they're pretty much there. So
plus, there's the elephant in the room still of Juve's appeal, and that's coming next week. So we will be able to actually talk about that with authority from next week, hopefully. But if as it stands, despite this win, as good as it was, Juve would still jump ahead of us in the table if they.
But only 1 point now, right?
Get the points back. Yeah, by only 1 point now, but still, that would shake things up a lot. Because at the moment, if it is as it stands, you have to feel relatively confident, just because Lazio would need to not only dive bomb their otherwise very good form, but they would need the teams below them to suddenly massively improve their form. And the encouraging thing from a Lazio perspective has been seeing that the inconsistency theme just continues. I mean, Milan and Inter dropping points this weekend to Salernitana and Empoli. Maybe some people did see that coming with Champions League around the corner, but those are bad results. And then Atalanta obviously losing as well. So
yeah, especially drawing at home against Empoli from Milan, that was a big surprise, honestly, a big surprise.
Yeah.
But Alasdair, going back to Lazio Juventus, I thought probably this was the best performance ever against Juventus for a Lazio game in Serie A. I'm talking without Supercoppa and Coppa Italia, because big disappointment for the goal Lazio conceded. But apart from that, I don't remember a chance for Juventus.
Yeah, I mean, they were
Except the last 30
dreadful.
minutes.
Yeah, they were dreadful for that first hour. But they are generally this season. They just have this way of somehow winning games without playing very well. And And then you see, I mean, this is a thing that's frustrating, from a neutral standpoint. If you watch Juventus and they do throw on their attacking players, it's like, God, they've got a good team there if they actually were allowed to play football. But so when they were, and Chiesa comes off the bench, and suddenly you've got Chiesa on one side, you've got Di Maria on the other, you've got Milik coming on, you're like, oh my God, this is dangerous. But the defense dealt with it so well. And this was the funny thing about writing up the game, because, that last 30 minutes, it felt very tense. It felt very edgy. But then when you're actually kind of summarizing the chances Juve created, they were very few. Very few that were really, notable chances. Paredes had a shot that came wide. There were a couple of blocked shots, headers over the bar, bits and bobs, but there was no moment where your heart was in your mouth and you were thinking, this is it. Again, it's the benefit of this defense being as rock solid as it was. It was annoying for the clean sheet run to end at 6, and it was even more annoying for it to end that way, where it was kind of Rabiot basically charging the ball into the net somehow. I mean, it was unbelievable that somehow ended up going in. But
we keep struggling with corner kicks. I would say both sides. Attacking, we didn't create pretty much nothing, and the goal from Juventus came from probably they had another couple in the second half, corner kick. And if you watch, it's Rabiot and another Juventus player, and no Lazio defenders close to them. So that's the concerning part, because Provedel made a couple of good saves there, but no Lazio defender was fast enough to interrupt Rabiot from putting in the box, in the goal. So that's disappointing, right?
I mean, you do have to, I guess, be a little bit critical there, but it was more disappointing, I think, the timing of it, because Lazio were banging on the door that whole first half, and it felt like they had to work really hard to get that goal when it came, and then immediately concede again. But to be fair, the goal straight after halftime, perfect start. Zaccagni, we've not mentioned yet, but I mean, another great goal from him, another big game winner from him after doing the same in the Rome derby. He's up to double figures now. It's the best season of his life. 10 goals in Serie A. Week by week, this omission, regardless of Mancini's beef with things that have happened in the past, it just looks crazier week by week that he was left out of that squad.
Best Italian striker. Nobody scored 10 goals.
Well, that's the thing. He's not even a striker, but he probably is the best Italian striker, just because he's actually capable of scoring.
And you mentioned Chiesa. I think he came in and played really good football. But at the moment, I think Zaccagni is a better player. Both because Chiesa is not 100% fit and he didn't play that much so far. But, I mean, if today you should pick one between Zaccagni and Chiesa, I think nobody would doubt, right? I'll go with Zaccagni all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he's hit a really good run of form now. He didn't quite. I think he started the year relatively slowly, actually. But then everyone really did in attack, to be honest. It was looking pretty bleak for a while. But no, he's had a terrific season, and we're seeing it now. This is perhaps something what people want to hear us talk about as well, is just the way that Sarri has really stamped his identity on this team now, because it is something that has definitely taken a lot of time. But I don't think I've ever had as many messages as I did after this game on Saturday, maybe because it's a Saturday night game, people are home for Easter or whatever, and there's more eyes on this game. But people seem to now be sitting up and paying attention to the fact that Lazio are playing in a style reminiscent to a Sarri team, or what people's imagination of a Sarri team is. And as we know, this Sarri team has actually had a lot of identities, and it's moved around a bit, and it's evolved, and it's gone this way, and it's changed shape, and its weaknesses and strengths have kind of differed as time has gone on. But now I feel like he's found a really good balance. And he seems a lot happier now that he's in a position where he has the week to work with his team. whereas players are actually able to take some days off here and there.
Yeah.
And so I think as a result, everybody is a bit happier.
Yeah, and the important thing, Alasdair, is you talk about our defense. I mean, we are scoring goals, and we are still the best defense of Serie A. And if you think about last year, I simply cannot understand. And now we have the balance, but we are playing with Milinkovic Savic and Luis Alberto. And if you go back to September, when Sarri was explaining that it wasn't possible for those two players to play together, and now not only they're playing, but we have the best defense. We don't concede pretty much anything to big teams, and we are able to find ways to score with or without Ciro. That was another big issue in the past. So incredible work from Maurizio Sarri. But even the players, I think they adapt, and probably they're enjoying what they are doing with Sarri at the moment. And this is the result of this incredible performance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is as well, it's historically right up there with one of the best Lazio defenses ever on record in terms of the numbers it's putting together, with clean sheets, with goals conceded. But it's not even like this has been the next step of their development from last season. Provedel, Casale, Romagnoli were all brought in last year. And the thing is as well, that's crazier on top of that, when you look back to the opening day of the season, Maximiano was the goalkeeper. Lazzari's playing at right back. Patrick starting ahead of Casale. So even when the season starts, this still isn't supposed to be what the Lazio defense looks like. The defense that has been settled on now, with Provedel in goal, with Marasic on the right and Husay on the left, and that partnership of Casale and Romagnoli, that is now nailed on as a defense. But that wasn't even the image of what this would look like at the start of this season. So it's incredible how effective they've become in a very short space of time.
We have a question. Do we still need a left back after his eye performance? Because his eye played great against Juventus again.
Yes. Next question.
Well,
yeah, I think we do. I mean, look, we can definitely praise his eye while saying that he needs competition.
Do you think we need one more, considering that Pellegrini is going back to Juventus, or do you think if we keep Pellegrini, we are fine?
Well, I find it hard to make a decision on how I feel about Pellegrini because we never see Pellegrini. I mean, I get more minutes out of him on Instagram than I do on a football pitch, but I just don't know what to make of him. We don't really know how well he fits into the Sarri team. We don't know what his particular strengths or weaknesses are, because all we've really seen was that one defeat to AZ, wasn't it? And he played relatively well in that game in an attacking sense. But to be honest, when it comes to these things now, I feel like this is a general feeling. Maybe you'll disagree, but I just kind of trust Sarri's instincts now. I think generally the calls he's made about players have been correct ones.
We saw.
I'd leave that decision up to him, but maybe Ilitane will disagree. Who knows?
Well, we saw more Pellegrini celebrating our goals than playing, right?
Yeah,
he's always the first one there celebrating, which is good, right?
Because, it does help. Yeah, it helps his case.
Because, you're not playing, you come here and you're the first one celebrating, etc. Which leads me to the other question. I'm surprised how little Lazzari has been playing the last couple of matches. Definitely, his eye performance has been great. Maruzic is playing at a very good level. But I guess we were used to Inzaghi, that he will sub both left and right back during the second half. This is not happening anymore. And I don't know. Do you think Lazzari time with Lazio is finished? Or do you think it's just a coincidence and Sarri doesn't want to change two players that are in great shape at the moment?
No, exactly. And look, I think Marasic has really enjoyed and thrived being back on the side he naturally would like to play on, and that's something he's not actually had tons of opportunities to do for ages now. I think it's just a good balance, and I think that's what you want. You want ideally two good options for each position is the best place you can be in, and that's where Lazio are. So I don't think if one of them is playing more than the other, you then talk about selling the other one. I think it's where we need to be. And actually, it's quite a nice balance as well, because Lazio clearly is a more dangerous player going forward than Marasic has been. So I think it's useful to have him there as an option, either for to start against perhaps weaker sides, or to bring off the bench and make an impact. So I think it's a pretty healthy position there.
Alasdair, we have two questions related to Ciro Immobile. The first one from Arif, saying that looking at recent form and this season overall, can we say Ciro starting to decline? This is the first time he's not a top scorer since he arrived. And then Alexander is asking, with Immobile back and suddenly Milinkovic Savic performing again, is SMS just too distracted to be leadership?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point. I would say that, Milinkovic Savic's form hasn't been completely directly correlated to Ciro being around. It's certainly been the case, of course, in the last couple of games where he's really upped his game, upped his performances. But no, I'm not sure. And to be honest, I'm never quite sure how much that really matters anyway. I mean, a football captaincy isn't exactly a huge position. There's not that much you really have to do, apart from wear an armband, shake someone's hand before the game.
Protest with the referee. Come on.
Well, yeah, and shouting at the ref. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the question about Ciro's decline, I mean, it's obviously this is something that's come up on and off throughout the season. I think it would be very harsh to make that kind of judgment at this stage, because even with the performances he has had on the pitch, so much of the season has been spent where he's either returning to fitness or he's not fully fit. He's been getting games when he shouldn't have been, when he's still struggling with injuries, and then he's been having to work his way back into fitness like he has the last couple of games, Juve included. So I think that does also obviously tell you a lot about the fact that he's getting older. These injury problems are going to become more frequent probably. But I mean, how many goals is he on? He's still got 8 or 9 goals, I think, this season, which is actually not a bad return at all for the amount of football he's played. So he's gonna score, isn't he? He's always going to score.
I think your friend didn't score that much, right?
Who's my friend?
Abraham.
All right. No, I think he's got 7. So yeah, I mean, Ciro's still. If you look at, I mean, I was going to say, if you look at the scoring charts, I don't actually have them up right now, but I would imagine if you look at the scoring charts that Ciro's actually not that far down, despite having spent so many weeks out.
Yeah. Alasdair, we have a question again from Alexander. He's asking, capital gains scandal. Can we end up with deduction point, or can second place end up being champions if Napoli suddenly are deducted a lot of points? Can we talk about what happened last week, Alasdair? I know you love it and you want to explain everything to our listener.
That's you just quietly throwing me in front of a bus there. Well, no, I mean, I can't do that really, because essentially there's not that much information to be had apart from the fact that there's been these 3 investigations launched into Lazio, into Roma, and into Salernitana. And they seem to be taking a similar shape to the Juventus one in terms of looking at transfers that have been going on over the last 3 or 4 years, and the kind of financial movings around those deals. And, evidence has been gathered, and taking laptops and documents and phones and all this kind of stuff to try and work out, which is how the Juve investigation started ages ago. 2 years ago, I think they did a raid like this. But, I think that, first of all, I don't want to get too carried away like everyone else seems to be talking about relegations and points deductions and all this stuff, because it's just far too soon to really say what kind of charges there might be with something like this. But then again, when you look at the list of deals that are being investigated, you do see that this is on a very different level. And one of the biggest problems that the FIGC seem to have with Juve, and one of the reasons they were able to give them this points deduction, was that they had this systemic attitude to inflating these player values, and it was something like 70 transfers, wasn't it? That they were being investigated for, and all quite high profile ones, Milan Pjanic and Artur Melo and people. Whereas Lazio's are all I think the highest profile player on that list is Akpa Akpro. So
it's the man.
A good day to have his shirt.
Well, can we say something you didn't mention? That they are talking about the exchange between Salernitana and Lazio. So the players, I think, are 5, because there's Akpa Pro, Maestro, Novella, and other 2 that at the moment I don't recall. But the point, Alasdair, is that all these players have gone from Salernitana to Lazio, and Lazio have paid these players. So if someone had an advantage, was Salernitana, definitely not Lazio. Paying 12 million euros for Akpa, I don't know how Lazio got any benefit out of that. So I don't think there's problem from the Lazio side. One thing they have to check, and this is probably the only thing Lazio should be concerned of, is if moving the players, Lazio have also paid Salernitana, or as the owner of both clubs was always Lotito, he just moved the players without paying. And other very important thing, did Lazio pay taxes for this signing? Because that's the other big part. But the thing is to mention is that there's a sort of camera at the beginning of the season where all teams put money, and when you transfer players between Italian clubs, you don't actually pay them. The money that is in this pot goes to the team that owns money, and the other way around. So if at the end of the season Lazio has -10 because they didn't pay Salernitana, the Football Association call Lazio and say, hey, they are missing 10 million euros here. What are you going to do? And so you pay out. So the thing is, all these transfers should have been already checked by the FIGC. Not only, Lazio is in the stock market. So Consob, that is the society who should check stock action and things like that, should be checking every year the accounts of Lazio. So Lazio should have been double checked. Can happen that they miss everything. I wouldn't be that surprised. But honestly, it should be very difficult for Lazio to be in a difficult situation in this case. And as you were mentioning, I mean, Aqua Pro is 12 million euros. You don't fix the balance sheet with 12 million euros. It's not the Osimhen operation where 4 players of Primavera were valued 20 million euros and none of them even went to Lille. So,
No, I mean, yeah. So that valuation to Akpro doesn't feel right. I'm sorry. I know you've got a shirt on, but then again, it's not. Yeah, it's not the same thing as saying that this has been happening systemically, which I think would make a difference. And one-off deals like this. I mean, you mentioned the Osimhen deal there. I do feel like this Juve case is gonna open a huge can of worms. And I said to you before we came on, to be honest, I mean, it was surprising that it was Lazio, but I wasn't that surprised to see the news come through that another investigation has been launched into Serie A clubs, because it did feel like this is probably going to be the start of a general clamp down on something that's been going on for a long time. And across a lot of clubs, I mean, look at, I don't know, but a lot of these deals seem to involve Sassuolo and Atalanta, for example, from the
Big
Juve
surprise,
and
huh?
the Juve and Roma transfers. So does that mean that those clubs will be investigated? I don't know. It's very complicated. I don't really. I'm no expert on this kind of legal financial stuff, but
Well,
I just think there's no need to panic yet because we don't know exactly what the kind of charges or not are likely to be, and we also don't really know. The one thing we do know is that this doesn't appear to be nearly on the same scale as Juventus, who might still get their points back.
yeah, and Alasdair, they are starting to dig even to Roma, as we expected, seeing what they did in the last couple of years. But one thing very important is that it looks like all this will be discussed after the end of the season. So going back to our friend Alexander, probably I would argue that it's going to be very difficult to have pointed deducted this season. Eventually, if anything happens, anything proved wrong, the deduction will be next season. So for
Yeah.
this season, should be fine for Lazio, Roma, etc., etc.
These processes take
Yeah,
ages. I mean, the Juve one, like I say, I remember reading that story, the similar story about them gathering information. You know, the raid on the training offices. I can't remember when that was, but it feels like it was 2 years ago or a year and a half, something like that. And then they have to get charged by the FIGC, and there's a Prisma investigation which is
yeah,
happening separately, and then they have to, appeal it to CONI, and the whole thing just goes on and on.
yeah. Which brings me to the last question, Alistair. Uh, do you think it was the right decision to deduct 15 points to Juventus now, knowing that maybe next week they're gonna give the points back? Would have been better wait, finish the season, and then maybe deduct the points next year or after the season is over.
Yeah, I find it really strange decision to make, especially because there is, obviously the possibility of that happening. And some of the arguments around it don't sound exactly ironclad either from the Fiji. So the fact that this can happen and prove to be a huge distraction, not just for Juventus, but for all the other teams around them in the league as well. And not to mention, their shareholders and all the rest of it. But I think it's a bit bizarre, but it does feel a bit like a point is being made. Like I say, I think this is probably the start of a general clampdown. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of these investigations launched, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. For now, I think we just have to, wait for more news, because there's not really going to be any developments imminently, I imagine.
No, I think you're right. Now the most important thing is how to get Alexandro back to earth, but I think that's another problem. Again,
Oh, one thing before we finish.
go on.
Vedat Murici.
He scored again twice.
He scored a stoppage time penalty equalizer, man of the match in a 3-3 draw. Unbelievable.
We had a question. Do we need a Viceshiro? Shall we bring Murici back?
I mean, he's not the most obvious Sarriball footballer, but I mean, he's having a great season.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him. Can I say it? Because
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
really a great player, a great man in a difficult situation. He never blamed anybody. Every time he talks about Lazio, he said it was his fault. So I'm really happy that he's having such a success in Spain. And I always thought he was a good player. He simply didn't fit Lazio's scheme. So I'm really happy for Vidat. Really happy for Lazio beating Juventus, to be honest. More happy about that. And again, thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the podcast. And if you want to support us and help us bring Alexandro back, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge, $2 a month subscription. And we'll be back after Spezia Lazio, that will be played this Friday, which doesn't make sense at all, but we're playing Friday.
All right.
Bye.
See you next time.